Alright, we're at Better Bodies here in Lakewood, Colorado. I want to take a chance to show you some of the stretches that I do after I'm done training a muscle group, after my workouts, that sort of thing. They're along the lines of the DC training stretches. They're essentially there to help stretch the fascia, continue to get more blood into the muscle, that sort of thing. They are not DC approved in the sense that these are just stretches that I use personally. Some of them I have changed now, some of them are pretty much the same, that sort of thing. But I want to be able to give you some idea of what I do, because if some of the stretches you're using don't particularly work, or you don't feel them, or just not getting a good stretch out, it's not a good angle, that sort of thing, you can trade one out from maybe one of the stretches that I'm doing here. So I'm going to start with the regular stretch for chest, and this one's very little variation from what the DC stretch is. I want to point out one of the main things that I'm doing with my stretching is I'm not going overboard on the weight, the amount of weight. I'm not trying to push up how much weight I'm using and get as high as I can. I want to use enough weight that I get a solid, good stretch and I can feel it deep in the muscle, but not so much that I actually lose track of the form, or it just becomes difficult to hang on to, that sort of thing. I want to be able to maintain the stretch and feel the stretch the entire time, instead of switching from feeling the stretch to battling to control the weight so that it doesn't rip my arms off. Alright, typical dumbbell fly. Make sure the dumbbells are out wider than 90 degrees. Good stretch so you can drive your elbows down as far as you can comfortably, and your chest high the whole time. I'm just going to hold this stretch. Most of you know this one. Nothing new here. I'm going to hold my stretches anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. When you're starting out, you're just getting used to the stretching, 30 seconds is a good place to start. And then I like to build in 10 seconds at a time from there, working up to 60-second holds. All right. I'm also not going to use big numbers today, or the numbers that I would use for my stretches, just for instructional purposes. So I'm going to drop down here. We're going to go into the shoulder stretch, or the front shoulder stretch. I'm going to get real light here. Now I picked this high bench on purpose so that there's more clearance between the bench and the floor, so that I can get a better stretch. The higher the bench, the more room you have to get a good stretch. So that's what we're going to do. You're going to come up like you're going to start a fly, but you're going to end up dropping the dumbbells in this way. The arms slightly bent, because if they're bent, you can get the elbows further down or deeper, which is going to give you a better stretch. Okay? This is going to pull on the front part of the deltoid, the front part of the shoulder, and you're just going to hold it here. This is an alternative stretch for the DC shoulder stretch. If you can't feel that stretch very well, I've heard from clients that they just don't feel it that much, it's hard to get into position, you can give this a shot, see if this provides the stretch that you're looking for. From there, because we're in this area of the gym, I'm going to jump to the tricep and bicep stretch, and then we'll go over and do the back stretch and the quad stretches. So for triceps, I don't like one-arm exercises and I don't like one-arm stretches. It's just a me thing, and this video is about me. So I'm going to show you a stretch here with one dumbbell, two hands, and I like a preacher bench for support. Drop in, I'm going to push my elbows up for the stretch, not tucked in this way, but back. And I'm going to let that dumbbell hang, keeping my elbows close, not flare, and just let it hang there and let it stretch. If you don't feel the stretch, my recommendation is to make sure that your chest is lifted and your shoulders, your elbows are back. If they're not back far enough, you're going to struggle to feel the stretch in the tricep. All right. Okay, back to the little ones. We're going to do a bicep stretch. Now, I came up with this one because myself, I couldn't feel quite frankly, I couldn't feel the difference between the shoulder stretch and the bicep stretch, the way that it's set up with DC training. So I played around with the bicep stretch and came up with this, and it works real well. In an incline bench, you can go with a bench that's straight up. So it's easier to keep your chest and shoulders high and back if it's on a little bit of an incline. Roll your dumbbells out to the side, lift the rib cage, and as you do that, you're going to feel the stretch in the bicep. And you're just going to hold that position, forcing the dumbbells. Notice how they're turned out to the side. If your rib cage drops, you're going to lose some of that stretch, so you got to keep it high the entire time. Actually, while I'm over here, I'm just going to take the opportunity to do the hamstring stretch as well. It's essentially a stiff leg deadlift. I imagine that most people are not going to have too much of a problem with form on this, but I just want to do it and point out that it's going to be important to not lock your legs. You wouldn't lock your legs in a stiff leg deadlift anyway, but I just want to reiterate that legs aren't locked back, they're slightly bent. That's going to allow the stretch inside the hamstring all the way to the outside, top to bottom. As with anything else with form, whether it's stretching or just doing an exercise, it's ass out, chest out. Alright, we'll run over here to the other side of the gym. We'll do a couple back stretches. I got one piece of equipment over here, a hammer strength that I just love. Don't know if that'll be in your gym, but if it is, you're going to want to give this stretch a shot. And of course, some quad stretches as well. Alright, for my back stretch, this piece of hammer strength right here, the way the angle is, it's kind of a up and out sort of pull so that you're pulling down and in. For me, this stretch has always been one of the better ones for me. It also provides support for your lower back. I sometimes stretch with long pulley rows, things of that nature, but it can get difficult when your lower back has to support the 60-second stretch after you're done training back, as far as fatigue and things like that. You certainly don't want to get into a position where you can't hold the stretch because your lower back is exhausted. So I prefer to use the pad here. Now all I'm going to do, pretty simple on this one, can't go very far. You're just going to let your shoulder blades loose as much as possible, lean in, and just hold the stretch. Alright, before we get into the quad stretch, I'm actually going to show you a couple quad stretches. I'm going to show you a lower back stretch that I use. It's essentially a hyperextension, but kind of I'm going to curl under the hyperextension. I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a minute. But I also want to show you, it's kind of an odd stretch here. Because I'm narrow-shouldered, this works better for people who have more of a narrow structure than if you have a wide shoulder structure. For stretching the side delt, rear delt area. Okay, and what I do is this. Clasp my hands together like this, lift the rib cage, spread, and open up your lats. and drop the shoulders down and back, pulling against your hands to pull and open up the back part of the rear delt, so the back part of the side delt and into the rear delt. Okay. Now, this is difficult to explain how to do. I've tried to show a couple clients how to do it. It's not the easiest thing. You're going to have to play around with it a little bit, but once you get that pull, you feel that pull, then you'll know where to hold it, where to hold that stretch. Okay, I'm going to show you the lower back stretch that I use here on the hyperextension bench. Essentially, all you're going to do here is, instead of doing the regular, typical hyperextension motion, you're going to come down and you're going to just curl underneath like you're doing a crunch. And you're going to go as far as you can, crunch in and hold. Now, this isn't going to be one of those stretches that you're, oh my gosh, it's such a huge stretch. What it is when you're done training back and lower back, you're going to have a lot of blood in there. Muscle's going to be pumped and you're going to feel more of a stretch than if you do just trying it out like I am right now for instructional purposes. So it's not going to be one of the extreme stretches to the point where you feel it like the chest stretch or the quad stretch, that sort of thing. But you know, you don't want to do a stretch like that with the lower back anyway. This is just to kind of open it up, keep your flexibility, especially for those people who aren't able to do stiff legs. Maybe you're not even able to do hypers because you have lower back problems. This gives you an opportunity to do an exercise, do a stretch that will help to keep that range of motion by keeping it stretched. I'm going to go over here now and show you the two quad stretches. Actually, go right here, I'll hang on to this right here. This is the typical quad stretch that most people who do DC use. I just want to point out a couple things, just kind of reiterate a couple of the important points. You go down into my quads are squatting yesterday. You're going to go down in your squat, hanging onto something that isn't going to move on you. Kick your knees forward and your hips up. The important part is the hips up, because once those hips come up, that's what's going to cause the stretch through the quads. If you're only feeling the stretch right down here in this part of the quad, right here above the knee, then your hips aren't up high enough. Essentially, for lack of a better way to explain it, all you really have to do is push your dick up and out. Here to here. So you get high on your toes, hips are pushed up. See this? When you do that, you're going to feel that stretch from the top all the way to the bottom, not just focused on the knee or above the knee, the bottom of the quad. Okay, the other stretch is this one here. What you're going to do here is you're going to bring your feet back in, up underneath your ass, feet about shoulder width apart. You're going to take your dick to the ceiling. The harder you push your hips towards the ceiling, the more stretch you're going to get. If you're not getting enough stretch, either your hips aren't pushed up high enough or your feet aren't back far enough. So you can always push your feet back further as well. That's going to pull all the way up into the front of the hip, all the way down to about 2/3 of the way down your thigh. It's not going to pull or stretch as much on the bottom part of the quad as the other stretch that I showed you for quads before that most people use. So I like to use both of them, mix it up a little bit. Another thing that I recommend too is on your multi-angle muscle groups, chest, back, shoulders. Try to use a different angle every now and then. Don't get caught up in the same angle, the same stretch. As an example, if you're doing your chest fly, bump up to the incline. Take it up, even if it's only up 15 degrees. Play around, get up to 45 degrees maybe for another stretch, you know, after another workout. Mix it up, move it around so that you don't get locked into that one specific angle of stretch. Okay, that goes for chest, Back is a real good example. You can of course hang from a chin bar, but you can use a neutral narrow grip. You can use a wide regular chin grip, pull your shoulder blades apart. Another thing that I'd like to point out is I realize that most of these stretches for back, you're told to use a wide grip so that it pulls the shoulder blades apart. And I completely understand that, and I agree with that. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you should pass on a narrow grip, because if you're using a narrow grip, as an example, a narrow neutral grip or parallel grip, whichever you prefer, you're gonna get a real good stretch as well. As an example, if you're either hanging from a chin bar, lap pull, that sort of thing. Lap pulls are good because you can actually lean back at the same time that you're pulling to get even more of a stretch than just hanging straight from the chinning bar. But my point is, try to get as many angles as you can, work those angles in. If it's bicep, tricep, that sort of thing, where it's not a multi-angle joint, then don't worry about it. You don't have to mix it up. The bicep stretch, if a bicep stretch works for you, whether it's the one that I showed with the dumbbells or the one where your arms are up on a bar behind you, then just keep that stretch and continue to use that. All right, in showing you the stretches I have today, the stretches that I use in my workouts, I'm hoping that you'll be able to take away some information that you can use to form the foundation of a stretching routine for yourself when you're done training, or to simply alternate one or two of the stretches that I use for the stretches that may not work that well for you to this point.